Okay, so get ready to hit the road because...
Our deep dive is taking us all the way to the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
You've sent over like a snack of articles and notes about driving in the land of windmills and tulips and...
Frankly, I'm ready to trade in my car for a bicycle already.
Yeah!
But before I make any rash decisions,
Let's see what insights we can uncover together.
what I think is really interesting about the Netherlands is how they're tackling this challenge.
So many countries face balancing progress, in this case a surge in car usage, with this commitment to sustainability and particularly their renowned cycling culture.
Yeah.
It's really a fascinating social experiment playing out on their roads.
And they seem to be doing it so effortlessly.
But how did they get here?
From what I gathered from these articles, the Netherlands experienced a massive car boom after World War II.
Much like the United States did.
Absolutely, yeah. Car ownership skyrocketed in the Netherlands during their post-war economic boom.
And this led to the rapid development of their Rijkswagen highway system, which is essentially their version of interstates.
Makes sense.
They needed a way to connect their growing cities, facilitate trade.
Right.
So it makes sense.
It does. But then comes the interesting part. Unlike many countries that went car crazy,
The Netherlands never abandoned its love for bicycles.
in fact, they doubled down on it.
What drove that decision?
Well, it wasn't so much about choosing one mode of transportation over the other.
It was more about recognizing that both cars and bikes could coexist, even complement each other.
And so this philosophy fueled their innovative approach to urban planning and road design, which is why you see those dedicated bike paths everywhere, often given priority over car lanes.
Yeah, which makes me wonder, how does this car-bike synergy actually play out in daily life?
Is driving in the Netherlands all smooth sailing and bicycle bells?
Well, it depends on where you are.
In rural areas, a car is often essential because of longer distances between towns, limited public transportation options.
However, as your sources highlighted once you hit the cities, particularly Amsterdam.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Amsterdam, with its charming canals and, let's be honest, notoriously narrow streets. Sounds like a challenge.
Even for the most experienced driver.
Imagine navigating streets that were originally designed for horse-drawn carriages.
Now shared with cars, cyclists, trams, pedestrians, all vying for the same space.
Yeah.
It requires a different set of skills, for sure.
Okay, now I'm starting to get a bit anxious just thinking about it.
So let's break it down.
Let's say I'm, driving into Amsterdam for the day.
What should I expect?
First off, you'll notice the Dutch solution to city center congestion.
Park and ride systems.
Okay.
You leave your car in a lot on the outskirts.
And you take advantage of their fantastic public transport to kind of get around.
It's a great way to avoid the stress of navigating those narrow city streets.
That sounds incredibly efficient.
But for those brave souls who do venture into the city center by car,
what's the driving experience actually like?
Honestly, the road conditions are generally excellent.
Smooth highways, clear signage, well-maintained roads. It's great.
But driving in Dutch cities, especially Amsterdam, requires this heightened sense of awareness and a good dose of patience.
One article mentioned it's less about aggressive maneuvering and more about a cooperative effort. Is that accurate?
That's a perfect way to put it.
You're constantly anticipating the movements of cyclists, pedestrians, trams.
Yielding to them, sharing the road respectfully, it's a far cry from
the hustle and bustle of driving in some major cities.
So it's less about me first and more about we're all in this together.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. But speaking of all in this together, what about the infamous Dutch roundabouts?
They seem like they could be a recipe for disaster with so many cyclists and cars sharing the road.
Actually, roundabouts are incredibly efficient and, when used correctly, far safer than traditional intersections.
They force drivers to slow down, pay attention, and yield to those already in the roundabout.
The Dutch have really embraced them, and they're a ubiquitous sight on Dutch roads.
I've heard they even have specific rules or nuances that differ from roundabouts in other countries.
Is that true?
You're right. One key difference is the priority given to cyclists.
In many Dutch roundabouts, cyclists have their own dedicated lane, often marked in red.
And drivers entering or exiting the roundabout must yield to them.
Okay.
It takes a bit of getting used to, but it's all part of that shared road mentality.
And don't even think about sneaking in a quick speed through those roundabouts.
From the research you sent, it seems like the Netherlands has a bit of a reputation when it comes to speed cameras.
Let's just say they're serious about enforcing speed limits.
Those cameras are everywhere, and they're not just for show. Get caught speeding, even by a little, and be prepared for a hefty fine.
It's all part of their commitment to road safety.
Which makes you wonder, are the Dutch moving away from cars entirely?
I mean, with the challenges of city driving, the strict enforcement, the emphasis on cycling, are cars becoming less appealing?
It's a fascinating question. While cars are still very much a part of Dutch life, particularly outside of urban centers,
There's a definite push toward more sustainable modes of transportation. And this is where their commitment to EVs comes into play.
their EV goals are incredibly ambitious.
One source mentioned aiming to completely phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2030. What's the driving force, no pun intended, behind this target? It's a multifaceted approach.
The Dutch government has implemented a combination of incentives and regulations to encourage the adoption of EVs.
This includes tax breaks for EV owners, subsidies for EV purchases,
Okay.
and even restrictions on driving older, more polluting vehicles in certain areas.
So it's a carrot and stick approach to nudge people toward greener choices. But incentives are only part of the equation.
What about the infrastructure needed to support widespread EV adoption, like charging stations?
That's where the Netherlands really shines.
They've invested heavily in creating a robust EV charging infrastructure with charging stations readily available in cities, towns, and even along highways.
They've made it incredibly convenient to own and charge an electric car.
It sounds like they're really putting their money where their mouth is when it comes to EVs. But they're not stopping there, are they?
They're also experimenting with some seriously futuristic technologies like those solar-powered roads we briefly touched on earlier.
Tell me more about those.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's becoming a reality in the Netherlands. They're testing road surfaces embedded with solar panels that can generate electricity.
Imagine roads that power homes, businesses, even the very cars driving on them.
Okay, now that's what I call a bright idea, literally.
But seriously, what are the potential benefits and drawbacks of this technology?
Well, the potential benefits are huge. Imagine roads generating clean, renewable energy, reducing our reliance on fossil fuels.
And even offsetting the environmental impact of driving. However, it's still early days. The technology is expensive.
And there are questions about its durability, especially in harsh weather conditions.
It's fascinating to see them pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And it's not just solar-powered roads they're exploring. There's also the development of smart highways, right?
What exactly does that entail?
Smart highways, sometimes called connected roads, use sensors and data networks to communicate with vehicles in real time. Imagine a highway that can warn you about traffic jams up ahead.
Adjust speed limits dynamically to optimize traffic flow.
And even alert emergency services in case of an accident.
So basically, a highway that thinks for itself. It sounds like something out of a futuristic movie. But what about the potential downsides?
Are there any privacy concerns with all this data being collected?
That's a valid concern, and it's something being carefully considered as this technology develops.
There are questions about data security, who has access to the information collected, and how it might be used.
It's a balancing act between technological advancement and ensuring privacy rights.
And then there's the whole sharing economy aspect of transportation, which the Netherlands seems to be embracing wholeheartedly.
Tell me more about those innovative car-sharing programs you mentioned.
Companies like Green Wheels, for example, offer a fantastic alternative to car ownership.
Especially in densely populated cities where parking is a nightmare.
You can rent a car by the hour or day, only when you need it, and pick it up and drop it off at designated locations throughout the city.
It makes perfect sense. You avoid the hassle and expense of car ownership while still having the freedom and flexibility of having a car when you need one.
But all this talk about innovative solutions makes it seem like driving in the Netherlands is a utopian experience.
There must be some downsides, some challenges that come with this seemingly utopian driving experience.
Let's rip off the rose-colored glasses for a moment
right.
and talk about the realities.
You're right. Even in a country as innovative as the Netherlands, challenges remain.
Traffic congestion, especially around major cities during peak hours, is a reality.
Right.
All those carefully planned roads and smart systems can only do so much when...
Everyone is trying to get to the same place at the same time.
And let's not forget about the elephant, or should I say cyclist, in the room.
It's no secret they rule the roads in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
As a driver, how do you adjust to that constant awareness, that sharing of the road?
Well, it's woven into the fabric of Dutch driving culture.
Cyclists are everywhere, and they have the right-of-way in many situations.
You're constantly scanning for them, anticipating their movements, yielding when necessary. It's a mindset shift, for sure.
It sounds like a constant game of anticipation, especially with those dedicated bike lanes often running.
Right, alongside car lanes.
Exactly. And it's not just about cyclists.
Those narrow, centuries-old streets we talked about.
Yeah.
They can be a tight squeeze, even for small cars.
And parking is its own special challenge.
Speaking of parking, several of the articles you sent mentioned the parking situation in Dutch cities as a major pain point.
What makes it so difficult?
Limited space, for one.
Historic city centers weren't designed for modern traffic volumes.
Right.
Then there's the cost.
Parking in city centers is notoriously expensive.
Okay.
And permits are often required for residents.
It's no wonder the park and ride system is so popular.
It sounds like good planning is essential.
So if I'm planning a trip to the Netherlands and I've got my rental car booked...
What advice would you give me to not only survive, but thrive on Dutch roads?
First and foremost, make sure your documentation is in order.
Okay.
If you're an EU resident, your standard driver's license is sufficient.
But if you're coming from outside the EU, you'll need an international driving permit.
And are there any quirks about renting a car in the Netherlands that might catch a foreign driver off guard?
One thing that often surprises visitors is that most rental cars in the Netherlands are manual transmission.
Oh, really?
If you're not comfortable driving stick shift, be sure to request an automatic well in advance.
Good to know.
I'll brush up on my stick shift skills just in case. Anything else?
Embrace those roundabouts.
We've talked about their efficiency, but they also require a different way of thinking about intersections.
Always yield to traffic already on the roundabout. And don't be surprised if you encounter a cyclist confidently navigating their designated lane within the roundabout.
Roundabouts, got it.
And I'm assuming those speed cameras we talked about mean radar detectors are a no-go.
You got it.
Radar detectors are illegal in the Netherlands.
They take speeding seriously, so stick to the limits, be mindful of your surroundings, and you'll be fine.
So to sum it all up, driving in the Netherlands sounds like this unique blend of modern efficiency,
innovative technologies,
and traditional European charm.
Yeah.
But it also requires a certain level of adaptability.
A willingness to share the road.
And a deep respect for cyclists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Netherlands offers a glimpse into what the future of driving could look like for many countries.
A future where technology and sustainability walk hand in hand.
And sharing the road isn't just courtesy, it's a way of life.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our Dutch driving adventure.
But before we go, here's a final thought to ponder. As the Netherlands continues to push the boundaries of sustainable transportation,
what lessons can other countries, even those with deeply ingrained car cultures, learn from their approach?
Food for thought. Until next time, happy driving.